Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. It's Shavonne's Christmas story times. Okay, they're not really Christmas stories, but we're doing the whole Christmas theme. I know y'all noticed the big elephant in the room. This lavish, very expensive, custom handcrafted fireplace that was built special for me. Now, it took me like a day and a half to build this thing. I built it out of cardboard boxes. I wanted to have something cool for the background or kind of cute, give you a little Christmas theme. It even had little lights at the top, but no, it was all it took all I had to get this phone to set up correctly, so we ain't about to touch it now. So this story time, we're going to reminisce back in my swamp days when I lived in New Orleans, and I also lived out, is it Plaquemines Parish? Well, I lived in Crown Point. If you look up Crown Point, that's Bayou. So when I lived down the swamp in the Bayou too. So I'm going to start out by telling you this really quick short story, and then it's going to go into my main story. And there's like a reason for me telling you this first story anyways. It kind of ties in with the second one, I guess you could say. Anyways, let's get started. So this was like right after I moved into like the Bayou, the swamps. So I lived in this, I don't know if it's still yellow. If you know the parish and you know the area, if you know where Crown Point is, I lived by the boat launch. And there was like a yellow house. I lived right by the park that was by the boat launch. I lived in this yellow house. And so you could literally walk out the house, turn to the right, and walk like 50 feet, and there was a bayou. So I was in the dirty. So I had some friends in the neighborhood, and their parents and stuff, they always took out the flatboats and everything. So they're like, hey, you know, they used to call me Miss Cityfied. So I would go fishing, lashes on, nails done, hair and makeup. But I would still catch the biggest fish. I'm going to tell you right now, I was catching fish like hotcakes, honey. And I'll put a picture of my 60-something pound blue channel cat that I caught, along with a baby gator as well. I had it in my bathtub. Don't tell game warden that. No, but out there when I lived out in the swamp, our police officers were game wardens. They weren't like regular police. They were like, you don't want to mess with the game wardens. So anyway, so we decided to take the flatboat out one day. We go fishing. And and one thing I like to say, I love my Cajun friends. And I love my Bayou people. Like, they are the sweetest, most down home, got your back, ride or die. Like, I don't know. Like, y'all touched me. Like, y'all Bayou people, there's something special about y'all. And I learned so much from the people out in the Bayou and stuff like that about camping in the marsh and duck hunting and stuff like that. Okay, anyways, back to my story. So we get in the flatboat and we go out, we go fishing. And so there's like 12-foot gators just laid out on the water, just floating on by us. And like they call me Cityfied. I'm like, y'all don't see these beasts over here in the water? They've got their shoes off, their feet in the water, dangling their little piglets off in there. There's like 12-foot gators over there just chilling. I'm looking at them like, y'all gonna get drugged up under this boat, and it's gonna be a gator roll, and I ain't gonna be able to save you. I'm sorry. But, you know, I was like, okay, I want to be part of the group. There's probably about 4 or 5. There's 4 of us, and one of them's dad was like, I think it was his flatboat. So they're on the side of the boat where all the gators was kicking it. And they had their feet dangling off in the water. So I was like, okay, let me put my little chocolate toes off in the water. And I'm on the other side of the boat, so I take my shoes off, and I threw my line in, and I pull up a fish, and I was like, oh, it's such a pretty fish. I was like, oh, it's a sheephead. And I was like, what's a sheep? It had like these huge eyes, and it had black stripes. I think it was blackish silver stripes. And it had, the fin was like black. And I thought it was like the coolest fish ever. I was like, oh, that's a sheep head. You can toss that back. We won't eat that. That's not good eating. I was like, why? And one of my friend's dad was like, look in its mouth. And so I looked in his mouth, and it had like billy goat teeth. You talk about, I was like, well, that's not creepy at all. So that was another thing I learned about those type of fish. And I was like, okay, well, I tossed it back in there. So, like I said, I took my shoes off and I had my feet dangling over the side. So I was like, let me put my little feet in this water. So I had my little feet, little chocolate toes dangling off in the water. And my other friends, my Caucasian friends on the other side of the pool, had their feet in the water by the 12-foot gators. So I thought, okay, I'm safe. You know, there's no gators on my side of the boat. Why when I pull my line, I see I don't have any bait on my line, and my friend's dad was like, hey, come get you some more bait, Shavonne. And I turn around, pull my feet out of the water, a gator comes up on my side. Like, this gator bypassed all their little Caucasian toes and came up under the boat. This is what I feel. This is how I saw it in my head. Came up under the boat and tried to get me. And I told him, I said, didn't I tell you these gators like dark meat because we tender and juicy? They'll bypass all them chicken breast toes and came over here to try to get this thick thigh, these thick thigh toes. And they, like, you're so stupid. You're so stupid. Okay, so that's like a real quick story about that. So that story kind of ties into the main story I want to tell you about. So when I moved out of Swamp, I was living in, what was it? I lived on the West Bank, Harvey. Yeah, I was living in Harvey. And I had some friends there that are from Alabama. And so every Sunday, we'd go to this, it was like, I don't know if his company owned it or if, no, he knew the guy who owned the land, but his company was renting it, I guess, from the guy who owned the land. They called him Cowboy or whatever. And so he would let us go out there and, once again, out in the bayou, he would let us go out there and fish, and we'd always pick up our trash and stuff, and he'd come by sometimes on his horses, or with his horses, and chat with us and stuff, and have a beer or whatever with us, and then he'd go about his way. Well, we decided we would go out there every Sunday, because we'd always be like, this is like our break from the madness, you know, quiet. We'd bring a little radio, we listen to the radio, we just crack beers, throw the lime in, just drink, and just like cut it up. So we drive out there and we're sitting there and we're drinking and everything, and this is how we always knew in a bayou when the fish were out, was because you could sit on the bank and you could fish, and on the other side, and two, another thing, where can you go and fish and see wildlife like this? Most people who don't live in the South or deep South or by the Everglades or whatnot, they don't get to see wildlife like that in person. They have to go to zoos and stuff like that. So I always thought it was cool how we could sit on the one side of the bank and we could see the gators just laying out in the sun. But we always knew when the fish were out and the fish were popping, because you would start to see the gators on the other side of the bank just go into the water. So then it became a game for us. So we throw our lines out there. We catch a fish. We try to reel it in fast enough to where the gators couldn't bite it off our lines, and then not too fast where our lines wouldn't break. So it kind of became a game for us. We're sitting there and we're like cracking beers open, and he used to always drink like Natty Lights, which is like water. And so I told him, I was like, if I'm gonna drink beer, I'm gonna drink a beer that's gonna give me a buzz. So we got these platinum, what was it, Bud Light Platinums? They're terrible. They taste terrible, but you can drink like 3 of them and you have a really nice buzz. And so, like I said, we're sitting out there, and he's like, I'm gonna try one of these Bud Light Platinums. He starts drinking them. And within the first one, he's like going cross-eyed. I'm like, this dude. I told him, you need to go back to the Natty Lights, because you can't handle these Bud Light Platinums. It's a little too much for you. Well, anyway, so he ended up like falling out of his chair a couple times, rolling down the hill. I had to go help him up. He doesn't even remember all this stuff. Fell out the chair again, had to roll down the hill, had to go down there, pick him up, bring him back. And then, so we're sitting there, we're just chatting away and cutting it up, whatever, listening to the music. And we start to see the gators go into the water. So he's like, I bet you I could throw this line and hook that gator. I was like, whatever. And two, you got like, we're sitting here thinking like, even if we hook the gator, we're fishing with fishing line. That's not going to hold a gator, you know. So there was this one that was like sitting out in the water. He kept trying to get our fish. So he was like, I bet you I could get him. And I'm thinking to myself, there's no way, because he's freaking lit. He's lit like the 4th of July and Christmas wrapped in one. And cockeyed and everything. He's like, no, I got this. I got this. So I was like, whatever. He's like, you don't think I can do it? I was like, no. And so then we started like laughing and kind of cutting up and making jokes because we had put like a basket down off the edge, like a crab basket, and we had only caught one blue crab and we hadn't caught any fish. So by then we're lit. And I'm like, okay, if you hook this gator, what we're going to do is we're going to pull him over to the side and you go down there, you keep reeling them in. I'm going to get, because there was like barbed wire fence poles. I don't know what they're called, but it's just the metal poles that they had the barbed wire go through. And there was one that didn't have line on. I was like, I'll pull this pole up out of the ground, and when you pull them up, bad ideas when you're drinking. This is when you get a good idea when you're drinking, when really it's not. So I'm like, yeah, you go down there, you keep reeling them in. I'm gonna pull this pole up and I'm gonna crack them in between the eyes. And this is the crazy thing, like when you're drinking, you don't really. This is I should say this is a prime example of when you've been drinking and you are not logical at all. So I'm thinking to myself, I've been drinking. I can actually pull this steel rod or steel pole up out of the ground and perfectly clock this gator right in between the eyes. They have a soft spot the size of a quarter. When you see those alligator hunters, it's the size of a quarter. A bullet can even go through the bone. So why did I think that I could just pull up this barbed wire fence pole and crack this thing in between the eye? He would have time to dive down there and grab it by the mouth. Oh my! And he was down for it too. He was like, "Yeah, we could do this. We could do this." Because, like I said before, we had only caught one blue crab. So I was like, and we had caught no fish. So I was like, if we can get this gator, we could saw its tail off and we could let him go, and then we'll have gator meat, and then I could make a crab bisque out of blue crab. I had one little blue crab because he was like, we need to throw that blue crab back. I was like, I told y'all I love food. So anyway, he's like, okay, we got this. It was like we was in a huddle. We had made this plan. So he's pulling the gator up to the bank. And I'm like wiggling. I'm trying to get this pole out of the ground. I'm like, oh, I almost got it. I was like, take your time. Don't let the line break. So he's slowly pulling him in. And he let him roll. And then he slowly pull him in. He let him roll again. So I finally get the pole up. And like I said, we're barefoot in the mud. And I turn around and he's froze. Like, my friend, he's like froze. He's like, Shavonne. He was like, I don't know about this. And I still got my back turned because I'm pulling the pole. I finally pulled the pole out. I turn around. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, look how big he is. And I looked down at him and I was like, oh, yeah, he's a lot bigger than 3 foot. I was like, but then I thought to myself, I was like, well, he's up here now. You can't make any fast movements because you gonna get got. Like, gators are kind of blind too. So if you're not moving, then you're kind of safe. So I'm thinking to myself, I was like, okay. And I'm thinking about my heart's beating, and he's like standing right there in front of him with the fishing pole. And he's like, I was like, he's like, I can't. He's like, you need to get this pole. He's like, I'm scared. I was like, okay, we're going to trade spots. I was like, I'm going to move real slow. So I move up behind him and I'm like, hand me the pole and you take the murder weapon. So I hand him the steel pole with from the barbed wire fence. And I'm reeling him in closer, pulling. I was like, are you ready? And I'm reeling him in closer. And he's not really done. Like I said, I'm barefoot. Like before, I told y'all, them gators like dark meat because we juicy and tender like them chicken thighs. And and the whole time I'm thinking, I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to dive on him quick, you know. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to move to the side. I want you to whack it right between the eyes. And I kept calling his name. And I'm like, what are we going to call him? We're going to call him Brad. So I was like, Brad, are you ready? Brad, are you ready? And I turned. He's gone. Like, he done threw the dang pole down the ground. He is booking it. He done dove on top of the hood of my car. And I'm sitting there. I'm standing there in front of this huge gator barefoot with a fishing pole, and the hook was only in its lip. It only caught it a lip, and I was like, oh my God. And I was like, Brad! He was like, come on, run, Shavonne, run fast. So I ended up throwing a fishing pole down and started booking it up the hill and threw myself up on the car. And I was like, oh my God, I don't even know. Like the fishing pole disappeared, the gator was gone. I hope he was okay. And then I found out later on that catching a gator without a license is like, I think a year in the pen, $100,000 fine of game warden. I was like, I didn't know. I'm like, I'm not from the swamps. I don't know nothing about that. But yeah, that was one of my fun times of living in the Bayou and living in New Orleans. And I got many more stories. Hope y'all guys enjoyed this one. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and click that notification bell. And make sure you give this video a big thumbs up. It helps me out a lot. And I would love for you to comment down below if you've had some pretty wild, crazy stories. And I will see y'all guys later. Bye. Mwah. Oh, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Shavonne.Ritchie so you can keep up to what I'm into.